In lesson 17, the distributive property is the main topic in this lesson. I don't want to make this too difficult here to start with because, well, first of all, you've had the distributive property before. We might just need a little review of this. Before we start with that, though, let's take a look at example 1. And we're just going to give a very general definition of the distributive property using an actual example. It says use the letter, and I should have letters there, but use the letters A, B, and C to write the distributive property. What the distributive property is actually this. So if I'm gonna take the letter A and then take the letters B and C and write it like this. What the distributive property is when you take the value that's outside of the parentheses. Now in this example, the value outside of the parentheses is A. That's the only thing that's outside the parentheses. Now what I'm going to do is, or we're going to distribute that value. Now if you think about the definition of the word distribute, when I think of distributing something, if a person is a newspaper delivery person, and they distribute the newspapers, they're going to take a newspaper to every house that has a subscription to that newspaper. So you can maybe think of this as what's outside here as that delivery person, and they're going to distribute the newspaper to this person, and they're going to distribute the newspaper to this person. So what we're going to do here is that example using the distributive property. So I'm going to take the A times B, and by the way, when we use the distributive property, it is multiplication. You take that value outside the parentheses and you take it times the B plus, and the plus sign comes from the plus sign that's inside the parentheses. If that sign were a minus sign, I would use a minus, but here it's a plus, so it's plus. So I'm going to take A times B plus, and now distribute that delivery person is going to distribute the newspaper to this person. So I'm going to take A times C. Now I can simplify this a little bit because I don't need the raised dot in these, and I can just write it as AB plus AC. So we've taken this problem and we've used the letters A, B, and C to show the distributive property. Now, when you have an expression like this that has parentheses, usually in math it's not considered to be simplified if it has parentheses. And the distributive property is one way to get rid of the parentheses. Now I'm going to go to this next slide. And what we have here, it says evaluate 4 parentheses 5 minus 3. Now you know what? We've had these examples before. And in this example, we've used PEMDAS. So in other words, the first thing that we would do is we would do the parentheses first. So I would take the 4 times 2, right? Because 5 minus 3 is 2, and our final answer is 8. Now that's a good way to do this one. In fact, it's the easiest way to do this problem. Now if we were going to use the distributive property, that's another way we could do this problem. So if we're going to use the distributive property, we're going to take that value outside the parentheses and we're going to take it times this, and then we're going to take it times this. It's important that you distribute it with both. So I'm going to take 4 times 5 minus, because of the minus sign in the parentheses, 4 times 3. And now we use our PEMDAS. 4 times 5 is 20, minus 4 times 3 is 12. And we get the same answer of 8. Now you might say, well, why can't I just take 5 minus 3, which is 2, and take 4 times 2? And that's a valid point. The problem with that is that sometimes we don't know everything that is inside or outside the parentheses. You might have a problem like this. We might have the 4, but maybe we have an A minus 3. I cannot do the parentheses here because I don't know what A is. How do you take A minus 3? I don't know. So the only way we can simplify this, and remember, when you have parentheses, it's not considered to be simplified. The only way we can get rid of the parentheses is to use the distributive property. So we would take what's outside times this, and then we would take it times that. So I would have 4 times A minus 4 times 3. Again, it's always multiplying when you use the distributive property. Now I can simplify this and write it as 4A minus 12. And we're done. Now something I want to emphasize is we cannot take this 4 and this 12 and subtract the 2. 4 minus 12 is a negative 8. We cannot write this as a negative 8A or something like that. The reason that we cannot do that is because this has an A in it, this doesn't. I can't combine the two. Now let's take a look at this example 3. Now in example 3 it says expand using the distributive property. Alright, so let's do that. Now I'm going to take what's outside the parentheses and I'm going to take it times this, and then I'm going to take it times this. So I'm going to write 2m times the xy. So take what's outside times what's inside first. This is just one term or one value there. Minus, then take 2m times the 3p. Now I can do a little simplifying here also. I don't need the raised dot, so I could just write this as 2mxy. If you wanted to, you could write it as 2xym or 2yxm. The order of the letters doesn't make a difference. Minus. Now this is all multiplication, isn't it? So I actually can kind of simplify 2 times 3, right? 2 times 3 is 6, and then the MP. And I'm done. I cannot take 2 minus 6 because this has an MP in it, this has an MXY in it. They're not the same. So my final answer is simply this. Last example is example 4. Now I'm going to take what's outside the parentheses times this, and finally times this. There's 3 things that are inside the parentheses on this one. So I got to actually distribute 3 times. So I'm going to take the xy times a plus, because of the plus sign is next, xy times b minus, because the minus sign is next, and then I'm going to take the xy times 2c. Now I can simplify these things. I can simplify this, this, and this. So what I have then is, let's see, xya. Well, I could just write that as xya. I don't need the raised dot. And again, if you want a different order of letters and that's something that you want to do, that's fine. You could write it as axy. It doesn't make a difference. Plus, well, just drop the raised dot in the next one and just write this as xyb. Minus, now here is something that's really important. When we simplify this last one, the number itself does have to go first. The 2 has to be first. And then, let's see, xyc, I could just write that as xyc. Or 2cxy. Now, I have 3 things then that I've simplified. This is my final answer. I cannot combine this into anything else. So my answer is xya plus xyb minus 2xyc. And what we've done is we've simplified this expression by getting rid of the parentheses using the distributive property. So the topic here today is the distributive property, and it's a topic that we're going to, actually you'll be using in the rest of this book.